Vinnie Colaiuta is one of the biggest names in drumming, not even in drumming, in music, and he earned that place by being part of some of the most recognized records in history and some of the best live performances in history as well, because he's a fantastic live musician, and he has played alongside the best. Just to name a few, he played with Jeff Beck, he played with Frank Zappa, he played with Herbie Hancock, so many of the greats. He's sharing a little bit of his experience here in this interview with Rick Beato, and I think there are plenty of points that he brings to the conversation that are words of note. We can listen a little bit to what they're saying, and then I'm gonna come back with a few comments of my own. So let's listen to it.
How important is flow? And talk about flow in your playing.
It's tantamount to me, and I think that I have this mantra, thought is the enemy of flow. You really can't be fully present in the moment, especially in an improvisatory sense.
Yes.
If you're thinking even for a second.
This actually might feel a little bit counterintuitive if you're just getting into the instrument, if you're kind of in the early stages of your musical journey. Because in the beginning you feel that you need to be super aware of everything that you do. You want to be very thoughtful in every musical decision that you make, because it's gonna make you feel in control. His commentary here shows a lot his experience. To be truly in control is not to overthink all of the details. It's to know that you're so good, you're so capable. And I don't mean this in an arrogant way, it's just that you got to a point where you can trust your abilities this much that you don't need to think, that you can actually deliver organic performances that are responsive to the context, to the music that's been created there on the moment. It's gonna feel organic, it's gonna feel real, and it's gonna deliver the emotional load that the entire band is creating together at that point in time. That's flow. That's flow. So let's keep listening some more and see what else we can get out of this fantastic interview.
You overcome that, and you don't succumb to that sort of, I'm gonna think now, and you're just in flow. Everything takes care of itself, and as it should be. And in a sense, then, there really aren't any mistakes.
Right.
There are just events and creative moments whereby you're striving, not even striving, you're just creating.
So once again, he's showing why he is the fantastic drummer that he is, because he comes out of this deep understanding of music. Not only music theory, but music, the art of music. This idea of no mistakes, only events, is something that comes from a very profound understanding of music itself. Because there's nothing that cannot be fixed on a musical scenario. There's nothing that cannot be turned into something musical, into something that works in the context of the music that you're playing. Of course, you need to be that good. And that's why it's important not to misunderstand as well, because it's not about, I don't have to care because there are no mistakes. No. If you're that good as he is, any slip, any accident, anything that could be considered wrong can be turned into something that can be considered right, and it can actually make it unique and a very meaningful moment in the music. This is the result of so many years of practicing, of such a vast vocabulary being under your belt, and not only you knowing that vocabulary, but you mastering that in a way that if you find yourself in a position where that particular phrase, that particular technique is gonna be required of you, it's gonna come out of you naturally. The way that it shows more massively than any other is improvising on stage, and something that he's one of the best in history. Let's keep watching.
How do you bring new ideas to your playing? I was thinking about this interview that Mike Brecker did a long time ago. He said that his playing would always be, ideas he worked on would always be 2 months behind. He'd work on something, but it would never come out in his playing until about 2 months later.
Sometimes, let's say if you practice and you just let things happen, things will reveal themselves to you, and then you might go, okay, well, let me work on this for a while. And sometimes what I end up doing, which I'm not sure if this is good or bad, perhaps I should work on things more, but I'll find myself doing things and I'll repeat them to the point where I feel fairly comfortable with them, and then I'll just leave them alone. Mm-hmm. I won't bother to write them down or anything. Yeah. Hoping that they will then somehow, coalesce.
Free your subconscious.
Exactly. So now, when I go out there, I'm not even thinking about that cool thing. I'm just hoping that it's just going to somehow operate in the background processing.
Yeah.
And that it will just emanate.
Yeah.
If if it so needs to. And the
Look, give me a second, because this is such a gem of knowledge and of experience. Because it's the antithesis to what we see happening very often here on YouTube or other social medias. Musicians, they are honing their craft, they are learning technique, they're becoming better. And you see fantastically technical musicians, but they usually lack musicality. And it's exactly because of this. Because see his stance on the matter of bringing new techniques into his playing is out of the context that the music provides. It's not because he's working on something new, because he's learning a new technique or a new phrase or whatever, that he's gonna try to shoehorn that into whatever he's playing. He's gonna keep it in his musical toolbox to be accessed and to be used whenever the necessity for that particular tool arises in a musical context. That's simply brilliant, and I know that makes perfect sense in theory, but in practical terms, a lot of drummers, a lot of musicians simply don't do that, because you want to use that new skill that you're developing, you want to use that technique, that phrase, and usually when it's forced in, it feels off, and it kind of breaks the flow of music. Simply great. Let's keep listening.
The other way for me that new things seem to happen is when I listen. When I listen and I'm getting fed, because people say that, they'll go, well, it's creative and, this, that, and the other thing. And I'll say, well, look at who I'm on the stage with. Some of the greatest improvisers in the world. Yeah. And they're feeding me. They're spoon feeding me. I'm just there to take it.
Yeah.
And then I'm just dialoguing with them.
Okay, because look, this is so great. And it actually holds quite a lot of synergy with what he mentioned before about not thinking. Because the way to be able to have this interaction with the other musicians on stage, to have this conversation, as he put it, is to not be thinking about what you're gonna be doing next. Because that kind of kills off the whole reactive nature of performing within an ensemble with a band. If you're thinking on what you're gonna do next, you're not paying attention to what the bass player is doing, to what the guitar player is doing. So in order to be able to have this reactive element that feels so organic, that feels so real on stage, you need to let go of whatever you're thinking and be there on the spot listening. A lot of musicians simply ignore the skill that it is to be able to listen to music while you're performing.
Would you recognize anything that you played? If somebody played you something, would you say, oh, that's me? If it was from 20 years ago, if it was 10 years ago, do you instantly recognize yourself?
Usually I can't. However, I've been such a chameleon.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
There have been some records that I played on that were so processed.
Yeah.
And I chameleonized myself so well that I didn't know it was me. I will say this, though, that 30 years ago and beyond, I found it easier not only to recognize myself, but to recognize almost anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for some reason, and I haven't quite put my finger on it, on the reason why, or to try or analyze it or figured it out, but I would be able to listen to, 10 different guys just playing the simplest thing, and I'd go, it's Keltner, that's Jeff, it's Gad, within a bar.
Look, when it comes to this particular point of being able to express a very particular, unique personality through your drumming, through your playing, I think he was trying to be a little bit polite or nice when he said that he couldn't pinpoint exactly what it was that made it harder nowadays for musicians to be able to be identified by their playing alone. He knows the source of the issue, and he just didn't want to say it because it probably sounded a little bit maybe arrogant. But honestly, musicians from his generation, like himself, they simply were better. They had more personality. They knew how to translate that personality into music through their experience, through their technique. And nowadays it's something that is severely lacking, because you see a lot of musicians that are incredibly proficient at a technical level, and they don't know how to use all of that technique, all of that vocabulary to actually express who they are. Everybody's sharing the same ideas, everybody's talking about the same things, everybody has the same views of everything, because everything is very homogenized through the mediums of communication, because everybody can have access to the same information on Instagram, on YouTube, on the internet as a whole. And it kind of makes everything very samey, even the personalities themselves. So even when talking about good musicians from a technical perspective, it's kind of hard, it's very, very hard nowadays to find a musician that is both good from a technical standpoint, that has the chops, that has the vocabulary to be able to express their personality, and also a personality worth expressing, which is, I think, the biggest differential from the musicians from this era from the previous one. Because you see, not only in drumming, in every single musical front, the musicians from the 60s, 70s, 80s, such gigantic, bombastic personalities that they feel larger than life. And music was simply their way of expressing that personality. But the personality came first. They needed to be those people in order for their music to be great. It's not because their music was great that they had fantastic personalities. No, personality actually is the driving force for making fantastic music. And I think that's the big differential. So yeah, actually, you see, in just a few minutes of sharing his knowledge and sharing his experience, so much can be taken out of it, because he truly knows what he's talking about. He's one of the biggest names, and for very good reason. So I think we should heed his advice, and I think we can all benefit quite a lot from that. I saw this interview and I thought to myself, there's so much value in here, and I wanted to also share with more people what I learned from it. And I know that this is so deep that a lot of people are actually going to have different takeaways out of the same material. So if you learn something different from the interview, please let me know in the comments, because this exchange can actually benefit all of us. The most important thing here is to try to learn from the people that clearly know what they're doing. He's one of the greatest. I want to be great, so I should be learning from him. I think that's my mentality when it comes to this. So I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, that way you can be notified whenever I do this again. And also, leave a like, because it doesn't cost you anything. Come on. Now, the only thing that gotta be said is that you should never let anybody tell you what to dream about, and remember that I'll see you when I see you.